welcome. You're here to drift into the past, slowly, gently, with each word, easing your breath and stilling your thoughts. Tonight, we're traveling back to feudal Japan where silence was sacred. Swords were symbols of soul and status, and honor was a burden worn heavily across the shoulders of every warrior. But not just any warrior. This is the story of those left behind, the forgotten, the wandering swordsman Ronin who once served lords, but now serve no one. You'll walk through their quiet, uncertain world, step by step. With each segment, we'll uncover the calm patterns of life in medieval Japan. From the lonely paths of the masterless, to the soft glow of candlelit tea rooms, to the haunting stillness of rituals long lost to time, let yourself relax. This will be a story of discipline, decay, elegance, and endurance. A story not told in shouts or songs, but in the hush of sandals on gravel, the creak of lacquered armor in the rain, and the endless wait for a dawn that might never come. So, close your eyes if you'd like. Let history carry you. Let's begin. Imagine waking each morning to the same bleak decision. Wander or beg. You are a samurai but without a master. You are no one. Your sword is still sharp. Your training still perfect. But your name carries no weight. You have no stipend, no land, no home. In a world ruled by order, you have slipped through the cracks of the class system, left to drift like fallen blossom in the stream. The year is 1685. The Tokugawa shogunate is stable, powerful, and coldly bureaucratic. The wars that once gave samurai glory are long over. Peace, it turns out, has little use for warriors. You live in the shadow of your former rank. Once, people bowed when you entered. Now they avoid your eyes. You are Ronena, masterless man. There is no formal place for you in this rigid society. You carry two swords, as all samurai do. The daisho, one long, one short, still sit at your side. But where once they symbolized service, now they whisper only desperation. Work is rare. You might sell your sword to a merchant needing a guard, or a noble wanting discretion. But mostly, you do nothing. You wait, you drift, you sleep where you can, and eat what you find. The rice is never enough. Sometimes, you sit by the gate of a temple and watch monks sweep the stones clean. Their lives are simple but clear. Yours is a quiet void. You are not allowed to farm, not encouraged to trade. You're trained to kill, but there is no war. The townspeople call you wave man, one who flows without anchor, without direction. It's not just poverty that haunts you, it's the shame. In a culture where honor is everything, losing your lord is not just unfortunate, it is disgraceful. Whether your master died, was disgraced, or banished, the end result is the same. Your social identity is severed. Your sword may glint in the sun, but its meaning is hollow. You see the stairs. When you try to rent a room at the inn, the proprietor looks you over. Your kimono is threadbare. Your hands are calloused. Your feet cracked. He hesitates. Will you pay? Will you cause trouble? He lets you stay barely near the hearth. The smoke lingers in your hair for days. And still, each morning, you bow before an invisible master. Still, you clean your blades as if you'll be summoned. Still, you recite the code of Bushido, loyalty, courage, honor as if someone is watching, but no one is. And that is the hardest part of all. They say vengeance is a dish best served cold. Well, if that's true, then the 47 Ronin must have feasted like kings. Among the many Ronin who wandered the edges of Edo society, few stories echo as quietly and as powerfully as that of the 47. Their tale is not of sudden violence, but of waiting, of stillness, of enduring shame in silence. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, a Ronin was a samurai without a master, often because his lord had been defeated in battle or worse, fallen out of favor with the ruling shogun. Imagine a world where your value depended entirely on the esteem of others, where even your right to live was subject to the whims of a superior. That was the reality for Japan's samurai class during the Edo period. And when a lord was stripped of his lands, his retainers became these sorts of masterless samurai, these ronin. They could drift from town to town seeking work, but finding honest employment was hard. Many turned to crime, but some stayed true to their code, enduring hardship and privation rather than betray the memory of their lord. They waited, sometimes years, for the opportunity to strike back at those who had wronged their master. These were the Chushingura, or the Loyal 47, and their story is one of the most revered in all of Japanese history. It begins, as many such stories do, with a loss of temper. In 1701, a young daimyo named Asano Naganor was summoned to Edo Castle. There, he was expected to receive instruction in courtly etiquette from an older official, Kira Yoshinaka. Now, the Tokugawa shogunate was precise in its expectations. Appearances mattered more than emotions. And while patience was a virtue, it wasn't always rewarded one. Kira, it was said, insulted Asano repeatedly. The details are lost to time, softened by centuries. Some say he mocked Asano's gifts. Others claim he sneered at his rural manners. Perhaps he was just doing his job, enforcing the shogun's laws and customs. But whatever his motivation, the result was this. One day, in a moment of rage, Asano drew his sword within the shogun's palace and struck Kira. He did not kill him, but the crime itself, drawing a blade in the palace, was unforgivable. That same day, Asano was ordered to take his own life. He was forced to perform seppuku ritual suicide alone, without. Now, imagine yourself in a quiet courtyard. The winter wind moves through the bare branches overhead. Lanterns flicker along the wooden eaves. The air is still so still, you can hear the soft rasp of a blade being drawn, the slow, careful breaths of the gathered witnesses. This is the scene of seppuku. To outsiders, it is often spoken of as a simple act-suicide, but within the world of the samurai, it was far more complex. It was a ritual, a final demonstration that a man could meet death with the same composure that once guided his hand in battle. For the samurai, life and death were never truly separate. Death was always there, hovering like a shadow at the edge of the tatami mat, woven into the scrolls that lined the tea room, hidden in the steel of the blade resting by his side. When a samurai was ordered to commit seppuku, whether for a crime, a failed mission, or an unforgivable insult, he did so not in hiding, but in public. Witnesses gathered. Sometimes they were retainers or clan elders. Sometimes they were the same officials who issued the order. The white symbolized purity of intention, of spirit. A tray would be placed before him. Upon it a short blade, often his own dagger. The blade, called a tanto, was not the elegant katana, the long curved sword designed for battle. It was shorter, thicker, its edge designed not to slice, but to dig deep. He would compose a death poem, few lines of fleeting thought, a last reflection on the impermanence of all things. These poems were not loud declarations, but quiet offerings to the world he was leaving behind. They are also known as Gigai Shugi, or as death letters. They served as a way for the samurai to express his feelings and thoughts during his final moments. The death poems were usually written in the traditional Japanese poetry style of waka, which consists of 31 syllables. They often contain themes of death, honor, loyalty, and nature. Some famous examples include Yosabisan's poem about cherry blossoms falling like tears from the eyes of old men, and Kobayashi Isa's poem about the sound of a frog jumping into a pond. These poems are not only a testament to the samurai's stoic acceptance of death, but also a step with me now from the lonely roadside inns and wind-worn courtyards, and through those high wooden gates, and across the drawbridge over the stinking moat. Now let us leave behind the clamor of the outer bailey, and walk together into the ordered, echoing heart of power in feudal Japana daimyo's castle. Here we will see what life was like inside the home of a Japanese feudal lord during the Edo period, who was a daimyo. Picture a patchwork quilt. All across Japan, dozens of daimyo feudal lords ruled their own lands like small kingdoms. These domains were granted to them by the all-powerful shogun, but required them to pledge fealty and supply soldiers for the shogun's vast army. To help keep track of them, every few years the shogun would hold an assembly called a joro, commanding every daimyo to come to Edo with his wife to show obedience and receive instructions. Imagine the scene. You, an ordinary samurai, wandering through the streets of Edo. Everywhere around you are the sights and sounds of one of the largest cities in the world. Stalls hawk roasted sweet potatoes and steaming bowls of noodles. Geishas glide through crowds. Laughing children race through the throngs, and barking dogs chase after stray cats. But in the distance, the air grows suddenly still. As you turn to look, a hush falls over the city. The crowd parts like the sea before a wave, revealing a magnificent procession winding through the streets. First comes the herald, followed by armed samurai, then a group of courtiers, and finally a golden palanquin borne aloft by strong porters. Inside sits a daimyo, a powerful feudal lord who rules a small kingdom hundreds of miles away. Their ornate clothing and stern faces announce their rank and importance. Even the finest merchants and master craftsmen bow low before them. After traveling days across the Tokaido Road, dodging bandits and highwaymen, finally they arrive safely at the shogun's palace. And now picture this. You have arrived at the top of a steep hill. Before you stretches the imposing front of a daimyo's castle. Its large keep rises above a maze of smaller buildings, all interconnected by covered walkways. To get inside, you must cross a wide moat. No simple task when it reflects the pale sky above, making its depth impossible to judge. After stopping to steady yourself, you reach the far side, where a narrow bridge crosses the water. When you reach the other bank, you notice two massive stone walls converging at an angle, almost like the arms of a pair of compasses. This design makes scaling the wall difficult by forcing attackers to traverse the flat top of the wall, exposing them to incoming arrows. Just as you start to relax, two guards clad in gleaming armor appear before you, spears held firmly in their grasp. They barely acknowledge your presence, staring straight ahead with unwavering focus. After waiting patiently for them to pass, you continue on your way, pushing open a heavy wooden door. Behind it, a second guard stands silently, spear propped against the frame. Once you've passed, the door shuts with a loud thud, muffling the sounds of the outside world. Stepping inside, you feel a sudden chill despite the heat of the day. The air grows heavy with the scent of sandalwood incense as you walk through the shadows. Suddenly, a beam of sunlight cuts through a paper screen. On the other side, a tiger seems to leap from the artwork and vanish into a bamboo grove. Beyond, a crane takes flight, disappearing into swirling mists. After passing another guard, you remove your sandals and socks and place them outside the door. Stepping inside, you hear a gentle creaking beneath your feet. The floor here is made of polished wood planks laid over a thick layer of straw. To avoid wasting space and feel the rough wind again against your face, imagine the road long, unmarked by milestones, winding through low hills dusted with frost. Here you are again, masterless. No gate opens for you tonight. No servant bows. Hunger is your quiet companion. No farmland to tend. No lord's coin to pay for a warm bowl of miso. Your training means little without war to fight or a master to protect. Sometimes you sell your skills bodyguard for a traveling merchant, messenger for a minor official, even a sword hand for the shadows of the city. When you pass through villages, children peek at you from behind gates. They see the blades and whisper the word. Wave man, a man adrift. It is not just the hunger of the body that gnaws at you. In a world built on loyalty, your disloyalty real or perceived clings to you like damp cloth. Some sink so low they abandon their swords, hoping to vanish into the peasantry, though even that is forbidden. A samurai must not farm, yet neither can he trade freely. He is trapped by the very code that once gave him pride. Still, each dawn comes. Some find new masters. Some join bands of mercenaries, drifting from province to province with rumors of rebellion or border skirmishes. Some, like the 47 you heard of before, gather secretly, binding their fate to a final, desperate cause. But for most, the path never forks. It only stretches on one dusty road leading to another. One cold dawn, giving way to another night, spent beneath the same indifferent stars. And so the Ronin wanders starved in belly, starved in spirit, waiting for a purpose that may never return. What you really hunger for is purpose, a reason to don your armor again. Instead, you find yourself scavenging for scraps, trying to stay warm in the biting cold. One time you had everything a samurai could desire: land, gold, a noble name. For a samurai, life without purpose is a slow death. Without a master to serve, you've become a nobody. You're just one face in the crowd, easily forgotten. But the worst part is the whispers behind your back. People call you a wave man, a man with no master. You can try to bury your shame in cheap wine, but the more you drink, the deeper the despair. Gambling might bring a temporary distraction, but it won't fill the emptiness inside. Some Ronin take the desperate step of abandoning their swords, hoping to hide among the common folk. But without purpose, what future awaits you there? Staying put only brings more pain and hardship. Each sunrise brings the hope of a better day. But as the sun sets, the cold returns. With no shelter and no money, you wander from town to town, sleeping under the stars. In the daytime, you walk. At night, you dream of home. You dream of warm meals, friendly faces, of a time when you were more than just a Ronin. But when you wake, your dreams are gone and you're still just a Ronin. Each day, you ask yourself, is this all there is? Is this how my story ends? You wonder if there's a purpose for your wandering, if there's a reason for your suffering. You search for answers, for guidance, for anything that can help you find your way out of this endless darkness. Maybe joining a band of mercenaries will give you a chance to prove yourself again. Or perhaps finding a new master will bring you back to the life you once had. But these hopes are like mirages in the desert, shimmering on the horizon. Will you ever be more than just a Ronin? Or are you doomed to wander forever, lost in a world that has no use for you? These questions echo in your mind, unanswered, leaving you to wander on, a shell of the samurai you once were. Yet, even in your darkest hours, something inside you refuses to break. You hold on to the memory of who you were, of what you could be again. Maybe it's the faint echo of your former glory. Maybe it's the whisper of your ancestors urging you to keep going. Whatever it is, it keeps you moving forward, even when there seems to be no reason to go on. Is there hope for you yet? Can you reclaim your honor? Or are you destined to walk the long road alone, forever searching for a purpose? That is for you to decide. Because in the end, So imagine yourself seated beneath the low eaves of a borrowed room, perhaps a corner of a temple, perhaps a tiny chamber above a tea shop that took pity on you for a night. A small writing desk sits before you. Beside it, a shallow dish of ink, a single brush, and a roll of crisp, waiting paper. The warmth of a single candle flickers against your sleeve as you dip the brush, letting the ink soak up the bristles in a slow, deliberate breath. Your master would have approved of this. Back in those days when lessons were a daily affair and your place was beside him, not on the road, this was a moment of quiet mastery. Calligraphy was more than writing. For samurai or nin included it was a meditation. Each stroke was a test of stillness, an echo of the sword in calmer form, a flick of the wrist here, a sweep there, pressure and release, balance and grace. The same control that once guided the blade now guided ink. The brush must move without hesitation, yet never rush. Too fast, and the line breaks, the meaning dissolves. Too slow, and the paper swells, bleeding intention into mess. In this dance of precision, the elements of the storm raged on outside. Now all was well, copying letters for merchants, even crafting scrolls for local temples. It was humble work, but it kept the mind sharp and the hands steady. And behind each character flowed meaning older than any single life. Discipline, impermanence, devotion to form. The words might be simpler, poem about snowdrifting onto a pine branch, a proverb about a stone beneath clear water, but within them lingered the quiet heart of a warrior's training. It was hard, lonely work, but something kept you going. Maybe it was the memory of your master's steady gaze. Maybe the hope of reunion with your family. Or maybe it was simply the rhythm of the road that sustained you. You saw lovers carving their initials into temple pillars and old men shuffling toward evening prayers. You watched merchants count their earnings by flickering lantern light and farmers arguing over the price of rice. Learn to tell where the wind was blowing by the tilt of a woman's hat, or the way a gambler nervously chewed his fingernail. Faces, places, things, experiences, they all became part of your story. A story written in lines as fine and fleeting as ink on rice paper. But among the myriad tasks a Ronin might turn to, few offered such quiet solace as calligraphy. So when the day's labor was done, and the chill of evening settled in, you might seek out a quiet corner of an inn, pull out your brush and ink, unroll a piece of paper, and lose yourself in the moment, painting a lone crow silhouetted against the last blush of sunset, or the gnarled trunk of an ancient pine, steadfast and enduring, whose angular forms and decisive curves spoke of courage, loyalty, and unwavering resolve. As the ink flowed from your brush, your mind drifted to your master, his weathered face and steady gaze, the quiet strength that had drawn you to him in the first place. You remembered the long hours spent in his dojo, the sting of sweat and the ache of muscles, the camaraderie of fellow students, and the thrill of mastering a new technique. You were today masterless, yes, but unbroken. The flickering candle flame danced in your ink-stained hand, a silent metronome keeping time with your steady breath. In this quiet solitude, you found a measure of peace, a fleeting tranquility amidst the turmoil of your life. Your worries, your fears, they all faded into the background, replaced by the simple rhythm of creation. When the last stroke was made, you stepped back to admire your work. The characters swam before your eyes, a sea of black ink on a stark white canvas. They were imperfect, perhaps, but they were yours, born from the depths of your being in that one precious moment of creative flow. You didn't need an audience, not really. But if someone had been there, if someone had looked upon your work with admiration, or even just quiet respect, well, that would have been enough. It was its own reward, absorbed in the timeless pursuit of beauty and balance. And as the night deepened, you rolled up your paper, put away your brush and ink, and turned to face the world anew, refreshed, rejuvenated, ready to meet whatever challenges lay ahead. The morning mist clung to the mountains like a wrinkled old man's cloak, and the air was as crisp and biting as a freshly honed blade. The sky was a vast expanse of winter blue, dotted with the lone cloud formations that looked like drifting smoke against the canvas of the heavens. A thin layer of frost adorned the ground, crunching softly beneath your sandals as you walked. Your breath plumed from your nostrils, quickly dispersing into the frosty air. Up ahead, the wooden gate of the temple framed a path leading into a tranquil courtyard. Passing beneath its protective arch, you found yourself in a sanctuary of sorts, a place where among the flickering lanterns of old Japan, stories drifted like smoke, some true, some half-true, some woven entirely of rumor and fear. And among these, none stirred more quiet fascination than the whispered rivalry between the samurai and the ninja. It's me. Welcome to the EdoCast. This is the last episode in our series on the samurai. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please remember to subscribe if you want to be notified of future installments. But today, we look at the so-called ninja. Let me set the scene. Imagine the world through the eyes of a ronin, drifting through towns and villages, hearing the hushed tales exchanged in sackhouses. By day, the samurai stands proud, armored in iron plates, his swords gleaming beneath the sun. He walks openly, name and clan stitched into the fabric of his robes. By contrast, the ninja moves at night, unseen, his name forgotten by dawn. Or so the stories say. In truth, the line between these figures was far less clear than legend claims. The word ninja, or shinobi, simply described a role more than a secret tribe. They were scouts, spies, messengers, sometimes peasants, sometimes low-ranking samurai themselves, turned to shadows by necessity. Some ronin, left drifting without masters or stipends, found quiet work as shinobi, for local lords or ambitious merchants. They carried messages through enemy lines. They gathered rumors in castle towns. They crept through the ink-black corridors of rival estates, listening where they were not meant to stand. Yet the myths grew larger than the men themselves. Popular tales painted ninja as masters of disguise, farmers by day, ghosts by nights, slipping past guards, scaling castle walls, vanishing into bamboo groves before dawn's first crow. Behind the mystery lay simple, practical truths. Dark clothing blended with moonless nights, sandals wrapped in cloth, muffled footsteps over creaking floors. Their tools were not enchanted weapons, but ropes, climbing. Picture a dawn that comes not with the clash of blades or the murmur of court, but with the soft rustle of rice stalks stirring under a pale sky. The world of the peasant was not written in scrolls or etched in family crests, yet it sustained every castle, every lord, every wandering ronin. Under the rigid hierarchy of feudal Japan, peasants sat just below the warrior class. In theory, they were respected producers of rice, the lifeblood of a domain. In practice, their days unfolded in a rhythm of toil, marked by weather and taxes, more than by loyalty or pride. This is Shogunai. Today, we're looking at how peasants lived under the rule of the samurai. For more content like this, please subscribe. Imagine waking before the sun lifts above the bamboo groves. You step into cold morning air, your feet bare on packed earth floors. Outside, the village is stirring smoke curling from small hearths, soft voices carrying through misty fields. Chickens scratch in the pale light, and the sound of a hammer on steel tells you the village smith has begun his day. You turn toward the rough wooden door set into your home's thick walls. Take a deep breath and step outside. Thatched roofs and whitewashed walls surround you, connected by crooked paths and low stone walls. A weathered signpost points to the river road and the orchard fields. The road ahead of you leads toward the center of the village, where the well is shaded by a spreading oak. Beside it, a weathered wooden sign warns against wasting water. Beyond that, the path widens into a level space. Here, the village elder sits beneath a pine, surrounded by children at their lessons. Nearby, a woman grinds grain while her young daughter sleeps in the shade of a nearby cart. Your neighbor, the tanner, is busy at his craft, and the smell of drying hides mingles with the smoke from the pottery kiln across the way. As the sun climbs higher, so does the temperature, and the shadows from the houses stretch out long fingers across the ground. It will be a long day, so you head home to start your chores. A thatched roof home offers little warmth in winter. Walls of woven reeds shudder when the wind sighs through. Children sleep wrapped in straw mats, their breath pale ghosts in the dim light. And always there is the fear of winter storms and the colder nights that follow. So now is the time to repair what was broken in the last month, and hold it in your mind for a moment. The katana, not the Hollywood blade, swung in flurries of sparks, but the real, think, Wyatt, precise, a length of curved steel that balanced the weight of a man's honor in its polished spine. For the samurai and even the drifting ronin, this sword was more than a tool of battle. It was an extension of the soul, shaped not only by fire and hammer, but by centuries of ritual and reverence. Imagine a single blade resting on its stand in the dim light of a simple room. Its scabbard is lacquered, dark, and smooth under your fingertips. The cord that ties it shut is knotted, just so each fold a mark of care. And within the scabbard, the steel weights honed edge so fine it can part silk drifting on a breeze. Forging a katana was a ritual in itself. Skilled smiths labored for weeks, sometimes months, layer upon layer of iron and steel, folded, hammered, and folded again. Impurities burned away in glowing embers. The metal cooled, then glowed once more, singing under the hammer's steady beat. Every curve of the blade carries intention. Its slight bend allows for a swift, fluid draw essential in the sudden, decisive moments that shaped so many duels. Its edge holds a line of hardened crystal structure. The hamana ghostly wave along the steel that whispers of the craftsman's hand. When a young samurai received his sword, he received a legacy. Family crests might be etched near the tang, hidden once the hilt was wrapped in rayskin and silk cord. The blade could pass from father to son, lord to retainer, master to apprentice, and for the ronin, who carried little else of value, the sword remained a final fragment of his place in the world. To draw the katana was not done lightly. Laws forbade reckless use. To swing it in anger without cause risked dishonor. Punishment even forced seppuku. Its presence was as much a promise of restraint as it was a threat of steel. Sometimes, in the hush of a moonlit courtyard, a samurai might draw the blade. Ronin stands beneath a flowering cherry tree, watching families picnic nearby while he eats his meager meal of rice. It's the height of Hanami, the flower viewing season, and Mount Fuji looms in the distance, a silent witness to the ephemeral beauty around him. He can't help but smile. Even the great mountain cannot hold back time, not even for a second. Not even the mighty Fuji can stop the cycle of death and rebirth, and he feels that in his bones. For weeks now, the lowlands have been awash in the pink hues of sakura, and tonight he'll follow the blossoms northward. He knows there will be more blooms waiting, more moments to forget his hunger, at least for a little while. He's been wandering since last autumn, ever since his lord was defeated and killed in battle. Now he travels with nothing but the clothes on his back, the katana strapped to his waist and the wakizashi hanging at his hip, along with the memories of what he once was. The ronin's existence is a paradox. Once he was a loyal samurai, bound by oaths of fealty and duty to his lord, the embodiment of Bushido, the way of the warrior. But now he is a masterless samurai, without a home, without a purpose. But as he journeys through the land, he finds new meaning in small things. He finds kindness from common folk. He battles bandits for coin. And most of all, he finds poetry, beauty, and magic in the simplest of places, in the fleeting nature of the cherry blossoms. Sakura has been revered in Japan for centuries, not merely as a pretty flower, but as a symbol of life, death, and rebirth. When the first buds appear, there is excitement and anticipation. People leave their homes to travel to far-off hills and valleys just to catch a glimpse of the flowers. During the Edo period, which lasted from 1603 to 1867, it was said that some 40 million people journeyed to see the cherry blossoms. Back then, the wealthy would hire boats to take them up the Sumida River, where they'd feast and drink while watching the flowers drift past. The sight of the cherry blossoms reminds the ronin of his former life when he had a purpose. As night settles over the tiled rooftops and the paper lanterns flicker low, the air in Edo thickens with tales not written in scrolls, but passed softly from mouth to ear, stories of shadows that linger long after swords are sheathed and vows are broken. In the heart of Japan's grandest city, where neon lights paint the twilight sky, and the bustling crowds hide as many secrets as they do faces. There are stories waiting in the shadows, and tonight we invite you to join us for segment 11, Ghost Stories from the Edo period. The people of the Edo period believed that death did not always close the door, where loyalty burned too bright or shame cut too deep. Spirits could slip through the thin paper walls of this world, drifting like mist among the living. Gather close, for the nights are long and the tales longer. Imagine sitting in a small, candlelit room tatami, under your knees, shutters drawn tight against the moon. Outside, the soft susurrus of night market vendors mingles with the distant thrum of a taiko drum. But inside, all is hushed anticipation. The flickering flame dances on paper screens, casting wavering shadows that twist and turn like phantoms in the periphery. And then he begins to speak, his voice a low murmur, weaving tales as old as the mountains, yet as fresh as the morning mist. The air grows still, heavy with the scent of incense and the weight of stories untold. The first one he tells is of a samurai, Kagui, a man of unwavering loyalty and unmatched skill with a blade. He served his lord with a devotion that knew no bounds, a silent shadow ever at his master's side. But fate, it seemed, had a cruel sense of irony. When the lord fell ill, Kagui was falsely accused of poisoning and given the choice: end his own life or watch his master die, believing him to be the cause. In a world where honor was as precious as gold and loyalty was a virtue to be cherished above all else, what would you do? Kaguu chose death, taking his own life rather than sully his name or his service. Yet his story does not end there. They say that on the anniversary of his death, his spirit returns to the castle where he once served, walking the very same paths he knew so well, his steps echoing with an otherworldly silence. Some say he seeks his master's grave. Some say he lingers near the spot where he ended his own life. Others claim to have seen him standing at the edge of the town, gazing out at the moonlit sea, perhaps wondering if his master ever knew the truth. But this is just the beginning. For the storyteller has more tales to tell, each one more chilling than the last. He speaks of the Onryo, the vengeful spirits that walk among them, women or men whose deaths were caused by treachery or violence, and who return to seek retribution. Picture a lone traveler making their way through a dark and narrow path between tall buildings. The only light comes from the paper lanterns hanging overhead, casting long, distorted shadows that seem to writhe and twist like tormented souls. Suddenly, a cold breeze sends a shiver down their spine, and the faint sound of footsteps echoes behind them. Turning slowly, they see a pale, translucent figure gliding towards them, their face obscured by the darkness. Some say the Onryo appear in glimpses, a pale face in a passing window, a cold breath against the back of the neck. They drift through village paths at dusk, seeking solace or perhaps revenge. The villagers speak of them in hushed tones, for to encounter an Onryo is not a fate to be desired. These spirits are bound to the world of the living, tethered by their unfinished business or the desire for vengeance. For many, the pain of betrayal, the agony of a violent death, is too great to be forgotten. And so they linger, trapped between worlds, seeking justice that never came. But not all ghosts are malevolent. Some are simply lost, wandering the earth without knowing it. There are tales of friendly spirits that help those in need, guiding travelers through dark and dangerous paths, or warning them of impending danger. Imagine a weary traveler making their way along a deserted road. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and the only sound is the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Just as despair begins to set in, a faint light appears in the distance, beckoning them forward. With renewed hope, they stumble towards it, only to realize that it's a paper lantern floating above the head of a young girl. She turns and smiles, her eyes filled with kindness, and her gentle voice breaks the silence. She offers the traveler directions, pointing towards the safety of a nearby village, or perhaps a warm and welcoming inn. And with a final wave, she disappears, leaving the traveler to continue their journey with a lighter step and a grateful heart. However, there are some spirits that are neither malicious nor helpful, but rather pitiable, trapped in their earthly form, unable to find peace. These are the spirits that evoke the deepest sorrow and empathy, reminding us of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. The story of Oyowa is perhaps the most tragic of all. A young wife, beautiful and devoted, is betrayed by her unfaithful husband. Driven by jealousy and vengeance, he poisons her, ending her life before she can reveal his infidelity to her family. But Oyowa's spirit is not content to rest in peace. Picture this: you're seated in a dimly lit room, the only source of light coming from a single candle flame dancing on the tatami mats. Outside, the wind howls, rattling the shutters and sending shivers down your spine. Suddenly, you hear a knock at the door, slow and deliberate, as if someone is trying to gain entry. You turn towards the sound, your heart pounding in your chest, and as you do, you catch a glimpse of a pale, translucent figure standing in the doorway. Her eyes are wide with sadness, and her voice is nothing more than a whisper. She speaks of her tragic fate, of the betrayal she suffered at the hands of her own husband, and of the torment she endures as a result. Her story unfolds like a funeral dirge, each word echoing with despair and hopelessness. You listen, transfixed, unable to tear your eyes away from the ghost before you, until finally she fades from view, leaving you in the suffocating darkness, haunted by her tale of woe. For Oya wanders the night, seeking justice for the wrongs done to her in life. Her story serves as a warning to others, reminding them that even the most beautiful and innocent can be consumed by darkness. But why do these spirits linger? Picture a hillside battlefield at dawn. Rows of armored men stand beneath banners painted with clan crest stickers, cranes circling dragons. The air hums with the weight of ancient oaths and freshly oiled steel, yet woven through that hush drifts a new sound, the distant crack of a matchlock firing. Musket smoke curls above the hill, marking the spot where a lone samurai stands. Katana gleams in one hand, a newly issued musket in the other. This is Japan in the late 16th century. For over 300 years, the samurai had followed the way of the sword, Bushido. But now, as firearms spread across the country, he finds himself standing at the edge of a changing world. When the Portuguese first arrived in the 1540s, they brought with them strange loud bells that boomed like angry demons, but also curious boxers that could spit fire and lead. These early firearms would become known as tanagashima, a term that translates roughly to Western gun. With no native name for these objects that spat death from afar, the Japanese simply labeled them with what they knew. The exact date for when and where these firearms were first used in Japan is lost to history. But some believe the earliest recorded use happened in 1562. Oda Nobunaga, A daimyo hungry for power faced off against the Mori clan in the hills of present-day Hiroshima. Accounts say that during the Battle of Itsukushima, the Mori used matchlocks to fire on the Oda, marking the first time these firearms were used in organized warfare on the island of Japan. It's likely that those early guns came from shipwrecked Portuguese traders who sought to ply their wares through trade. But as the decades passed, the Japanese learned to make their own matchlocks, and then some. By the late Sengoku period, and especially under the Tokugawa shogunate, armories across the country crafted guns of iron and steel, echoing with the ring of hammers on metal. While the daimyo who ruled Japan were quick to adopt these new tools of war, many samurai saw the growing presence of firearms with suspicion. The katana had been a part of their lives since the Heian period, a tool of war, a symbol of status, and a reflection. In this episode, we'll be looking at the role of the tea ceremony in the Sengoku and Azuchi Momoyama periods. We will be covering how the tea ceremony was used as a tool for diplomacy and forging alliances during a time of constant warfare. We'll also discuss the role of certain schools of tea and their influence on the daimyo. The tranquil setting of a Japanese tea room can feel worlds away from the chaos of war-torn Japan. Yet, amidst the clash of steel and rumble of cannons during the Sengoku and Azuchi Momoyama periods, the quiet ritual of the tea ceremony thrived, serving not just as a calming practice, but as a crucial diplomatic tool. This fusion of serenity and strategy creates a fascinating study in contrasts, revealing how the seemingly disparate elements of warfare and tranquility can coexist and even reinforce each other. The tea ceremony, known in Japanese as chenoyu or sadukuro, wasn't just about refreshment. It was an elaborate performance, a carefully choreographed dance of gestures, each movement laden with meaning. It's a multi-sensory experience that engages the sight, smell, and even the taste, creating a sense of harmony and balance. This ceremony, with its deep symbolism and focus on minute details, provided a unique platform for diplomacy. Imagine a small, dim room, bare walls, a single scroll hanging in an alcove, a flower arranged just so in a slender vase. The scent of fresh tatami mingles with the faint aroma of charcoal burning in a hearth. Here, warriors set aside their swords, folding their legs beneath them in quiet rows. This is the Tearoom Chishitsuwa space, apart from the roar of battles and the clash of armored feet. In feudal Japan, the tea ceremony was more than a graceful ritual. It was a fragile stage where alliances were forged, rivalries cooled, and the restless pulse of warfare slowed to the rhythm of a single, steaming bowl. Picture a daimyo receiving a visiting lord or emissary, perhaps a potential ally or a former enemy seeking reconciliation. Outside these walls, their retainers stand watch, hands resting on hilts, eyes scanning the shaded garden, ready to spring into action if any disturbance arises. However, inside, the atmosphere is one of tranquility. Armor is left at the threshold. Swords, too, are often laid aside, an unspoken sign of trust, or at least the desire to seem trustworthy. With weapons out of sight and minds focused on the present moment, the tea master moves with quiet precision. Each motion is deliberate, pouring water, whisking powdered matcha into a smooth green froth. The guests watch closely, for here power lies not only in the flavor, but in the details. A well-chosen tea bowl might hint at humility or hidden wealth. The scroll on the wall might carry a poem of peace or a subtle warning wrapped in elegant brushstrokes. Every aspect of the ceremony carries weight, offering subtle cues that speak volumes in the world of diplomacy. For example, the type of tea served can convey a message. Matcha, the powdered green tea popular during this period, was prized for its distinct bitter taste and vibrant color. Presenting matcha to guests could symbolize the host's wealth and power, as high-quality matcha was expensive and time-consuming to produce. On the other hand, serving a less ostentatious tea could convey a sense of humility or create a more egalitarian atmosphere for important visitors. The host would carefully consider the type of tea in line with the desired message. During the tumultuous Sengoku period, great warlords like Oda Nobunaga and his successor, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, made extensive use of the tea ceremony to cement alliances and project their power. These men of immense power and ambition recognized the potent symbolism of the tea ceremony and used it to their advantage. By hosting rivals in carefully orchestrated tea gatherings, they could neutralize potential threats and establish a sense of control and sophistication. One famous instance of this occurred when Hideyoshi invited the Buddhist monk Hotei-eni to his castle. Hotei-eni was not just a religious figure, but also a respected leader in his own right, commanding a sizable army of followers. Toyotomi Hideyoshi understood the value of bringing him into his fold, and so he went to great lengths to ensure that the tea ceremony was performed flawlessly. For over 2 centuries, the Tokugawa shogunate held Japan in a steady, iron embrace. The castles stood firm, the daimyo bowed low, and the ronin drifted quietly through the margins of a society that prized order above all. Peace, hardened and carefully maintained, settled like dust upon the islands. Yet even the calmest pond hides currents beneath its still surface. Samurai stand watch at castle gates. Peasants bend their backs in rice paddies. Merchants, once scorned by warrior pride, grow quietly rich behind paper screens. Outside these shores, the world changes with a roar. Cannons boom along distant coasts. Steamships, black and vast, cut through waters once sailed only by wooden junks and fishing skiffs. The West presses incurious, restless, armed with iron and treaties inked under threat. In 1853, Commodore Matthew Perry's black ships anchor in Edo Bay, their smoke and towering masts a sign that the old isolation Shikoku cannot hold. The shogunate, caught between proud tradition and the cold reality of foreign power, signs treaties it cannot fully enforce. Within Japan, unrest simmers. Samurai, once the backbone of the shogun's power, find their stipends shrinking as the costs of opening to the world grow. Many become ronin, once more displaced, not by war, but by quiet economic decay. Peasants bear new taxes. Rice prices swing wildly. Famine flickers through the countryside like a cold wind. Reformers rise in the shadows of old castles. Young samurai speak in secret of restoring imperial rule, of bringing back the emperor, long a figurehead, as a symbol of unity and strength against foreign intrusion. And so the shogunate does not fall to fire alone. It unravels in letters exchanged by candlelight, in alliances forged in tea-houses and old shrines, in the quiet footfalls of messengers crossing mountain passes with hidden orders. By 1868, the Tokugawa shogunate yields to the Meiji Restoration. The last shogun steps aside, his authority fading like ink in rain. The emperor, once cloaked behind layers of ritual and distance, is restored to power, a symbol of a nation that will soon modernize at a dizzying pace. For the ronin who survive to see this turning, the collapse is bittersweet. The samurai class, long upheld as the stewards of order and honor, is abolished in name. Swords are banned in the streets. Topknots are cut. The old codes remain only in memories, poems, and the gentle hiss of steel in the hands of aging men practicing kata alone at dawn. The world moves on steamships, dock in bustling ports, telegraphs hum with foreign words, and the land that once knew only the hush of bamboo forests now echoes with the clang of rails and factory bells. Yet, beneath it all, the spirit of the Ronin lingers quiet, drifting through alleys and temple gates, a reminder of a time when loyalty and loss walked side by side under a sky of falling cherry blossoms. Picture a broad plain at the foot of distant mountains. Snow falls in slow, steady flakes, gathering on the shoulders of silent men. Around them, banners stand still in the hush, their clan symbols half hidden by drifting white. This is 1877, years after the shogunate's fall, when the final embers of the old way flicker in a bitter winter wind. Here, on the plains of Kagoshima, the last true samurai stand beneath the gray sky. led by Saigo Takamori, a man many call the last of his kind. But who was he? What did he fight for? And why does his story matter today? We made a whole video about him here on this channel, but today we're doing something different. Today I want to try to show you what his story might have looked like, what it might have felt like to be there. Because stories aren't just words on a page or pixels on a screen. They're moments in time given body and bone. They're emotions made real. They're feelings under a winter sun. They're a stillness in the face of death. They're everything that whispers between the lines. And so let me show you a little bit of what Saigo's story might have been. Saigo had once served the Meiji government, helping to shape the new Japan. But the same changes he helped ignite turned against the very class he embodied. Edicts stripped samurai of their stipends. The sword, a symbol for centuries, was banned from everyday life. Hair was cut short, uniforms replaced flowing robes, steamships, railways, telegraphs, siege, new wire. Each new rail tied the nation closer to the outside world, but loosened the bonds that once bound warriors to lords and lords to fields. For many samurai, it was not just a loss of power, but a loss of self. And so, when all petitions failed, Saigo rose in quiet defiance. His followers, former samurai clinging to the old code, gathered what they could: matchlocks, blades polished for a war they could not hope to win. They marched not for conquest, but for the fragile dignity of a vanished world. The year is 1877. The place, the desolate plains of southern Japan, windswept and empty, save for the low ridge that cuts across the middle distance. There, behind a crumbling stone wall, a small band of men are preparing for the coming dawn. It will be cold, colder than most days. Even the rising sun will do little to pierce the bite in the air. And though their camp is small, the chill seems to press in from all sides, seeping through threadbare tents, chilling the hands that gripped chipped mugs of bitter tea. Soon, men will move out. There will be sounds of shuffling feet, the creak of joints grown stiff from long marches and shorter rations. Then there will be the soft but urgent commands, the clink of steel on steel, as weapons are checked and double-checked, the mutter of prayers, too private to hear, too personal to understand. Then the men will leave the camp, melt away to take up positions along the ridge. They wait for the inevitable clash with the new imperial army. Their rifles are few, their cannons old, their swords shining only for an age that no longer needs them. And soon, the blue-clad soldiers of the new Japan will appear on the horizon, marching steadily toward the ridge like a tide of steel and gunsmoke. Imagine the silence before the final clash. A line of men kneeling in the snow, blades drawn, eyes steady, breath visible in the frozen air. No shouting, no cries of defiance, only the faint sound of snowflakes landing on lacquered scabbards. Then the firing starts, sharp and sudden, echoing across the lonely plain. Men fall back to side, one to another, a tangle of loyalty and love, each heartbeat a prayer. When the rifle fire slackens, the samurai rise and advance. Swords flash in the pale light, cutting, thrusting, parrying, answering blows. There is little chance of victory, but honor demands the fight. Each warrior moves in a flurry of silk and steel, a desperate dance to the edge of a grave. With every blow, the samurai know this day will end in death, theirs and their lord's. As the last of the clans fall, the new Japan surges forward. In the fading light, Saigo faces his final test. A young officer stands before him, sword held high. The two blades flash as they cross. Saigo is older, his strength failing. The end comes swiftly, cleanly. The young soldier bows. He has done his duty. The snow falls, covering the dying man's face. As night falls, the wind rises. The snow drifts higher, piling up against the low stone wall, erasing footprints, blurring the line between dead and alive, burying the fallen samurai beneath a white shroud. In the morning, the wind has died. The snow is a blanket on the plain, undisturbed except for a few tracks leading away from the ridge. The young soldier walks back, kicking up a spray of white. On the ridge, the snow is stained crimson. A few spent cartridges glitter in the weak sunlight. One katana lies half buried in the drift, its handle carved with the rising sun. A little farther on, a leather scabbard, a broken helmet, the ghost of a scream frozen in the curve of a shattered visor. Lower down the hill, a single hachimaki, a white cloth headband bearing the crest of a forgotten clan. The last of the samurai lie buried beneath the hill. The wind picks up again, swirling the snow into miniature cyclones. Across the plain, the first train whistles, a long, lonely cry in the vast emptiness. It races up the valley, vanishing around a curve in the hills. The snow keeps falling, covering past and present alike, in a silence that remembers everything, then lets it fade. In the years to come, Japan transforms. Trains whistle through mountains where Ronin once walked alone. Cities swell with factories and electric lamps. The sword becomes museum piece, heirloom, sometimes quiet whisper in a family shrine. Yet in quiet corners, a mountain temple, a weathered dojo, some still gather at dawn. They kneel, they bow, they draw the blade in slow, deliberate arcs. The steel hisses softly, a memory of old vows folded into the crisp winter air. Outside, the snow drifts down, covering names hidden beneath. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go finish that video on Seigo's life. But maybe now you can hear a little bit more of what his story might have sounded like, what it might have felt like to be there. After all, isn't that what stories are for? To show us what it feels like to be alive, even if that life is long gone, lost to the snow or the sea or the shifting sands of time. So now, as you drift here in the quiet, remember the footsteps of those who wandered before you, men bound by loyalty, undone by peace, carried forward by a code that asked much and gave little in return. May their silence remind you that all things pass, winter into spring, shame into pride, loneliness into rest. And here, in this warm, modern moment, no swords to polish, no lords to serve, no battles to wait, for let your breath slow. Let your thoughts settle like snow on an empty road. You are far from those drifting wave men now. Rest easy, sleep well.